Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Euzoia, the weekly podcast where we, one topic at a time, look at what makes a good life. But before we get started, Cam, anything you did since last week? Anything you changed?
Yeah, since last week, actually, I know I keep going back to this one, but sleep is the thing that's still on my mind. I think I've historically had issues with sleep, and it's interesting because I feel like it's taken me a long time to get into some of the habits I've been doing. I do all these different habits, but still, I think one that has affected me is using my phone in bed and like watching shows and YouTube and all this. But actually now, after seeing so many posts and newsletters and this stuff that there's even evidence that being on your phone like just reduces your sleep like 20% or something like this. So now I have stopped using my phone and I'm reading instead to fall asleep.
Oh, nice.
And I notice I fall asleep faster even. So that's probably been the biggest change. And just on the meta level, sometimes it just takes hearing about, the advice like
Right.
5 different
Right.
times. So maybe it's one where it's like surround yourself with health advice and, health content, and you kind of just start to absorb it.
You should subscribe to our newsletter and then your life will improve. I do the same, although I feel like it mostly works. But then yesterday, for example, I finished this book and I was like, it's not that much left. And like 3 hours later, I was
Mm-hmm.
like still not asleep. But I think I had a very good sleep after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my biggest change is I finally got this helmet. I look very dorky in it, but it's better than the alternatives that I found. It has a little rain cap here and everything.
I love
It's still going back to our risk episode, where I found that cycling in Amsterdam is probably the riskiest thing I do right now in my life. With this little helmet, I will hopefully be a bit safer and also practice my disagreeableness, I guess. So
it.
we'll cover this in a later episode. Yeah, but for this episode, we're gonna look at mental frameworks. We looked at awareness acceptance. We looked at emotional regulation as kind of the first two sections on the mind, and now the third one is mental frameworks. So this is less in the moment stuff and more like practicing how you think, basically. For the longest time, I kind of assumed that you just think, like your thoughts is like they come and go, and like that's literally like what mindfulness teaches you, and you just kind of have to accept this and kind of see what happens. But I think by now there's lots of evidence that you can actually shape the thoughts that will come into your head. And I think that makes sense, right? Like at the end of the day, your brain is like some kind of association machine. And if you just train specific associations more, then you can kind of train yourself to think these thoughts more. And by this, of course, you can become obsessive about this. And the failure mode of this is like you try to force yourself to think some specific things. But I by now, I really think you do have influence on what you're thinking. So that's exciting. And today we're going to cover a bit what you can do there.
Amazing. So maybe moving on to the next topic of agency. This is actually one of my favorite topics or things to read about or try and do in my own life. And I think probably has one of the biggest returns that you can get. It's basically just understanding or realizing that you can actually do things and change things in your life. And on a meta level, once you do this, everything becomes a bit easier. So the first thing is you can practice agency. So I think getting out of this kind of mindset where you feel stuck or that things are happening to you and you're helpless is to just do things and see what the outcome is. Even if you do something random, you might find out something like you'll see, okay, this doesn't work, this does work. So even just like moving randomly, I think can help. And doing some tasks that are maybe in the more difficult but not impossible realm, and just like achieving something will build up a sense of success and agency, and this can really help you as well. So then second to that is having a growth mindset. I think this is kind of applying agency to yourself and saying, okay, I can actually change, I can grow. And it's similar to the first one where you're just building a consistent practice of kind of like believing that you can do something or you can grow. And then finally, effortless action. Sometimes I think high agencies, like, there's these people in SF or whatever that have a bit of a toxic view that if you just have enough grit and control, you can do anything. But I think there's a better way to look at it. It's more like in harmony with your environment, or it's more like in tune with what you actually want. You don't want to overdo it, but do look internally and see if it aligns with what you actually want to do as well. And then finally, I had my own quote here on the Substack. So I think one of my favorite things about agency is it almost creates this runaway effect where once you start to realize you can take action and like actually have some success on a particular problem, suddenly all of your other problems become a lot easier to deal with and move forward. And you can also stack this, I think, interestingly, by like moving on your highest leverage problem. So for example, the sleep, diet, exercise, definitely check out those posts. If you use agency to solve those, suddenly things will become a lot more easier and you'll have a bit more willpower to apply as well. And finally, I want to shout out one of my favorite posts by Kate Hall on just how to be agentic. It's in the Substack as well, but it's a really great post and, might help you move forward if you're not sure exactly what to do.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's one thing you can practice, like just by doing small things, getting used to being agentic. Other things you can just practice is gratitude and positivity. So by every night or every, I don't know, week or in some pattern, like thinking about things you're grateful for, or thinking about for gratitude, it's things you're grateful for. For positivity, it's just imagining a future that's going to be amazing. Imagining kind of your best possible future, which in a way is having a positive mindset. You always see like how this could have a positive outcome. By practicing these thoughts, by doing this over time, we'll just become a more grateful, a more positive person. Another thing that you can try practicing, but it's a bit harder, is abundance. Like you might have heard of a scarcity mindset where if there isn't enough of something, you kind of really narrow down, right? Like, so maybe you've been in a situation where you don't have enough money or you don't have enough time. Like most of us, I guess, never have enough time. And then this creates this stress. And then the only thing your brain can think about is like, how do I get outside of the scarcity mindset, right? Like how do I get the money to feed myself? How do I like find the time to sleep? And like, that's the only thing you can think of. And through this, you really narrow down. And to get from this to an abundance mindset, one thing you can do is to reinterpret situations more in the same way as with gratitude and positivity is just think like, what still am I getting from these situations? That better way seems to be to just create abundance. That might not always be possible, but like, for example, cut spending so you actually have more of a buffer. Like rethink, is there maybe something in my calendar that I can just cut and stop doing to create a bit more of a buffer for time? And thereby slowly get your brain back into a sense of like relaxation and abundance.
Amazing. So then moving on to epistemics, I think this is a really interesting one. I personally have a principle where I try and align reality with what I think with the truth of reality. And then one of these concepts is like the scout mindset. I think it's named after the book by Julia Galf. It's a really good book if you want to check out. So it's a drive to see things as they are, not how you want them to be. And this is helpful because then you can actually act on that information. And one way you can practice is by making predictions and learning from the results. There's a bit of a trend of people betting against each other, which is a good way to align your calibration because, if you lose, you're going to feel the pain of losing some money or something like this. And then one adjustment you can make is thinking more in probabilities as opposed to black or white beliefs, and seeking out people with opposite beliefs and seeing what evidence would change your mind or change theirs. You can play these sort of like steel man, straw man games. So definitely one to check out and can help you have a kind of more accurate view of the world as how it is, as opposed to how you kind of want it to be as well.
And then in the same way that you can like use agency, apply it to yourself, and you get the growth mindset, you can kind of take this kind of scout mindset, apply it to yourself, and end up with something that's often called like restructuring. So there, the idea is similar to using the scout mindset to see what actually is true in the world out there. You ask yourself, what's actually true about the thoughts I'm having? We talked about how we can shape the thoughts you have through like gratitude, agency, abundance, all that stuff, but you will still end up having thoughts that maybe don't feel good or like put you in a bad state. And there, this restructuring can be very helpful, where you basically ask yourself, what about this thought is actually true? Like, what evidence do I have for that thought? And then kind of trying to reframe it into something more balanced, maybe. If you want examples for this, we put in the post on acceptance and awareness already a journaling prompt for how you can do CBT style journaling, just doing a lot of these restructuring thoughts. And then sometimes thoughts just are objectively true, right? Like you can apply the scout mindset and see like, okay, like what evidence do I have for this thought? But like you might just be in an objectively bad situation, right? Like totally possible. But even then you can try to reframe that situation. Right? Almost every situation will have some positive aspects to it. So you can try to see the positive. You might know some people who do that too much, maybe. You can also reframe to look at it like from take some distance to it, right? Like how would I think about this or feel about this 10 years from now? Probably it's not that relevant, right? Like how would a friend think about this or feel about this? And then I just create some distance and kind of reframe from those thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, it reminds me of the book Man's Search for Meaning. He's in a Holocaust camp and he still, manages to find meaning and purpose. I think if he can do it, then you probably can do it as well. So that's maybe another thing to think about. And maybe finally, I'll just say on the agency, it maybe as well trying to apply to your life and seeing what you could do. Maybe it's a problem that you've been like kind of putting off in the back of your mind. It's like, oh, I'm just stuck in this situation. There's nothing I could do. I would challenge everyone to try one thing that you wouldn't normally do and see how it goes and then learn from that and then move forward.
I think in general, like we just again like brain dumped a whole lot of like things you can do to adjust your mind, right? Like at the end of the day, like pick one of those that sound interesting, right? Like maybe it's positivity, maybe gratitude, maybe agency, maybe this reframing thing. You can always look at our Substack and kind of read through it again and see like, okay, like let's just pick one and see like how can I build a habit in my life where I will, at least for a week, I try to do this. And I had this like on-off relationship with gratitude and positivity journaling, and like I did it for a while, then I stopped again. Like the latest hack that I've seen a friend do, and that I love it, is he just with his partner, like before going to bed, would like share gratitudes about the day, and I thought that like so wholesome. So like I also tried it with my partner, and it's just a super nice bonding kind of end of the day exercise. It doesn't feel like, okay, now I'm doing gratitude journaling to like improve how I look at the world. No, it's just like it's nice to do. So yeah, if you're looking for one thing to try, I yeah, maybe start there.
Amazing. I need to try that one with my girlfriend as well.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks for listening to us. Next week will be about something around like broadening your mind. And as always, subscribe to Substack, YouTube, Spotify, share it with some friends, and see you again next week.
Thanks so much. See you next week. Wear your bike helmets.